Welcome to World Artist Experiences Symposium, Culture is People, Storytelling into the Future. World Artist Experiences' vision is to bridge people and cultures across the continents using the international language of the arts for dialogue, for mutual understanding, thus developing trust, respect, and steps toward peace in our fragile world. The first session of the symposium showed us the importance of storytelling. We were challenged to share our stories in all of our lives. The stories of the arts and storytelling told how they can settle conflict with peaceful resolutions in our communities, countries, and world. If you missed the first session, you can check it out on the World Artist Experience. In tonight's session, we will hear stories around culture and the land through the stories of artists of so many backgrounds and many places around the world. We are honored to have Deputy Secretary of State Luis Borunda serve as our moderator this evening. Mr. Borunda is the first Hispanic Deputy Secretary of State of Maryland and oversees Maryland's subnational relations. He has been a leader in entrepreneurships, in business, education, and had marvelous experiences getting Latino and American youth to dialogue. From Mr. Borunda's vast experiences, he recognizes the great importance of listening to others' stories, and I might add, telling his own stories. Mr. Borunda, thank you for moderating tonight's symposium.
Thank you, Betty. It's a true honor to share your stage with you tonight, and but specifically, it's my pleasure and honor to moderate this august panel. I've got to say, this is one of the most diverse international panels that I've ever had the pleasure of moderating, and so thank you and your team for bringing this fantastic program to our audience this evening. First of all, I'd like to welcome our panelists very quickly. I'll name them one by one, but then we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about our panelists. Daryl Dennis will be on our panel tonight, as well as Lynette Ford, Carlos Tanaka, and Cheick Diabate. All of these panelists are experts in their fields and bring to us a diverse culture and sense of who we are as human beings. So again, it is my honor to moderate this panel tonight. Let's kick off with Daryl Dennis. He's a multifaceted Native American, First Nations actor, writer, and comedian. Dennis has gone from a classic theater production in Shaw Arms and Man Standing, Miss Julie and Pinter's Deceived. And he's also led or had the lead role, of Frank Fence Post in the CBC television series, The Res. And after that particular series, his career exploded. He then co-founded the all-native comedy troupe, Tonto's Nephews, and the LA-based all-Native American comedy troupe, the Mayflower Welcoming Committee. Dennis's one-man show, Tales of an Urban Indian, was nominated for 2 Dora Awards, not 1 but 2, and he had the best original play and best performance by an actor for that particular award. Currently, Dennis is a series regular on the Teen Nick YTV show, Open Heart, and he has a book. It's called Peace Pipe Dreams, The Truth About Lies About Indians, and it's available in bookstores and online. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce the audience to Daryl Dennis. Darrell?
Thank you very much, Louise. Thank you so much. I am very, very excited to be here today. This topic we're talking about is one that I feel very strongly about, mostly because I am an Indigenous artist, Indigenous from North America, and so much of our culture and so much of what we do in our art and everything that sort of revolves around, you know, how we live our lives is based in the land. It has been that way for, you know, centuries, the centuries we've been here. Before I talk a bit about my story, I think, like most Indigenous people, I can't really start speaking about my own story without going back from before, you know, from before I was on this earth. I need to talk a little bit about my people and our history to the land. I come from the Secwepemc Nation, and we use the term nation where I come from. Most people use tribes, we call nation because it represents the fact that we are and view ourselves and had relationships with our government at one point as sovereign nations, like you would deal with any other nation like England or France. When we originally had contact with with Europeans, they had a relation with us as sovereign nations, as we were, you know, as when we outnumbered the European people who came to this land, and as we helped them to sort of get settled and save them from, you know, starvation and you know, from their own growing pains on this land. But my people, the Secwepemc people, are from what is now called British Columbia in the interior of Western Canada. But our experience with the land was that we were nomadic. So we would travel and we would live and we would hunt and we would fish, you know, between what is now called America and Canada, before there was an America and Canada, before there were borders, before there were rules telling us when and where we could go. So that was how we lived our lives. We traded with and we lived with other nations, from Canada all the way into the United States, so what is now called the United States. So we have a long history of freedom on our land. We had laws of trade. We had laws of you know, neighboring, how to be good neighbors with people all throughout the land. And it was a natural law. It was a law based not on you have to stay here and you have to stay in this little parchment of land, but it was a law that that benefited us and our neighbors and those people that we traded and worked with for our survival. So there was a lot of cooperation. There was a lot of intertrading, not just goods, but culture and especially stories. So stories and, you know, legends and ways of speaking and I guess what you would call theater back then. So there is for a lot of Indigenous people on this land, there was a lot of the stories that we hear now, a lot of our art, our culture, our storytelling, our theater, as you would call it, is taken from different cultures and sort of absorbed into our own, and we made it our own. This is called the oral tradition. This is how a lot of our people transmitted information, was through passing it down, speaking orally. And as a result of that, a lot of our stories shifted. We have a lot of stories about shapeshifters in our culture, and that's because a lot of our stories shapeshifted as well too. So a lot of times our legends, our history would change over the years depending on who it was that was passing on this knowledge and this information. And that sort of is something that is taking place even today. When my people first had contact with the Europeans and especially with missionaries, we were some of the last people in Canada to actually meet these people and be affected by them. The Europeans had gone from the east all the way into the west, so a lot of the other people had made up treaties and had done their wars and skirmishes. So by the time these people had gotten to my territory, we had only heard about them before. So a lot of what happened was, although a lot of those wars and diseases we were the last ones to experience those, we had heard through these stories and through the line about how the Europeans had treated the people from the East, and we were sort of ready for that. So the thing that's unique about our culture and about our land is that in British Columbia, a lot of our Indigenous people didn't sign treaties with the so-called white men that came there, because we had heard about what had happened in the East. So even today, there's a lot of problems with determining who owns the land, who belongs to the land in the province of British Columbia, in my territory, because we are on what's called unceded land, which means that there were no deals, there were no treaties signed, there were no agreements signed with the governments of the land. So there's still a lot of dispute in my territory now as to who owns the land. Are the European squatters on traditional Indian land right now, which has opened up a lot of land claims, a lot of court cases, and a lot of sort of disputes between natives and non-native people in my territory as to, you know, who is the actual owners of that land. So this has really affected kind of my culture and the way that a lot of my people have dealt with the dominant culture in our area, in that we have a lot of my people have been fighters. We've been a lot of resistors as a result of these disputes. So I come from a long line of warrior people. I come from a long line of fighters. I come from a long line of resistors. And even to this day, a lot of my family are really well known. We're seen a lot on TV as being resisting against the colonial governments, against police, you know, against the influx of development onto our lands as a result of that. I come from a land I come from a history of storytellers in my own family as well too. My great-grandfather was one of the last medicine men in our community, and was a storyteller and a story keeper as well too. My grandfather and my father also tried to hold on to a lot of those old stories as well and pass them on to me. Unfortunately, what happened in the last century or two was what was called the residential school system for my people, which meant that as the churches and the missionaries came in, they changed our culture and people dramatically. My last name is Dennis now, and the reason for that is because when the missionaries came to my territory, they couldn't pronounce our language or our Indian name, so they just gave us whatever the name of the priest was who was sort of dealing with the people at the area. So that's why my last name is Dennis, because of Father Dennis. And you'll find a lot of people from British Columbia Indigenous people have that same thing. Their last names are Peter, their last names are Paul, their last names are Dick and Harry or whatever it is. And that's because so much of our language was just completely erased from us, and we were imposed with these names of whoever the missionaries were. With the influx of the missionaries came the residential schools. They were called boarding schools in the United States. It was this mass program in order to, what the intent was to assimilate Indigenous people into the mainstream culture. But what it really was, and it's not even that secret, it was sort of put in government policy, was to sort of erase Indigenous culture and Indigenous people. So there was these schools that kids were kidnapped from their communities and placed in these schools at, from ages like sometimes as young as 4 all the way up to school age, where the language was taken away from them. It was beaten out of them. There was epidemic sexual, physical abuse at the hands of these schools. But mostly it was the trying to erase any sign of Indianness in people. I think one of the government policies was kill the Indian to save the man. Was one of the policies in the United States. So this has affected my culture completely. A lot of my family and culture has been devastated by this. And what's happened a lot because of this treatment was a lot of our culture, a lot of our stories, a lot of our language, the intent of our stories, the storytelling has been lost. So we have had to, as people try to reclaim those stories and tell them in a modern context to our understanding with what is left of that beautiful culture that we once had. So I was no exception. I grew up on a reserve, the after effects of that residential school experience in a lot of poverty, and there was a lot of violence and a lot of pain, as a lot of reservations have these days. And I was bused into school in town. The local town where I discovered drama class. And I was originally put into drama class because I was kind of a class clown, and my mother thought that it would sort of help me blow off steam, but I actually became completely enamored by it. But because of where I came from, because I was Indian, and because I was from a reservation, I never really imagined that I could make a living of it. All I had going for me was to become a logger or work on a ranch, or become a mechanic. That's all I thought was open to me, because that's all I saw around me. Those were really good careers for my people, and that's all we really thought we could do. So eventually I moved to Vancouver, and as luck would have it, for some strange reason, I heard this open call on the radio for this TV series, which never happens. And I happened to be skipping school that day, and I heard the call. So I went down and auditioned, and I got the part, after a series of auditions. And I became, I came from this incredibly poor, incredibly poverty-stricken reserve to going to this TV show on Canadian television. It was this teen drama. So I had never experienced money before. This was completely out of my wheelhouse. And when the series ended, I was sort of looking, because I was now in the city. I was in an environment that I wasn't used to, because I was off the reservation. And what happened a lot with a lot of Native people who leave the reservation and go to the cities is they find their land, they find their community, they find their own storytellers in areas like Skid Rows, where there's unfortunately a lot of Indigenous people. And I found myself down there as well. And that's sort of where I found my people, but at the same time, I felt comfortable in that feeling of that self-deprecating feeling, and that feeling of not being good enough. And it took a long time for me to get out of that. And one of the best ways that I was able to do that, long story short, was I started writing. I started writing my own story. I started writing my experience, the story of my people, our history. And I became empowered by that. And I became empowered by the fact that I was creating what I wanted to see on the stage, on the screen, on the movie theaters. Because at that point, the only time you ever saw Native people on the screen was in these old 1800s Westerns, where we spoke broken English and we were usually the sidekick of white people. Or you saw us as, unintelligent or criminals. And so the way that I really found my power and was able to break out of that was I started writing. I started writing what I wanted to see. I started writing my experience, which was not what I saw on the screen. And as a result of that, some of my writing got picked up by a theater company. As a result of my first play getting produced, another play got produced at another theater. And then a number of TV people asked me to write television scripts for them. And through that, through me telling my stories to them, I got involved in the stage in Second City, the famous Second City, and I became the very first Native American performer in any of the Second City stage companies, and it's just blossomed from there. And I'm now in the process of developing my own shows and creating, writing movies, and waiting to be greenlit for those. And I think the reason that I was able to achieve the sort of success and pull myself out from that depressed area was by being truthful about what I wanted to see, being truthful about my own story, and trying trying to right some of the wrongs of the stereotypes and the misconceptions that have infiltrated our history since the beginning of recorded history in North America. And yeah, I could continue to go on, but I think we're getting close to my time. So that's just a little bit of my journey and my story, and how that's based on my people's relationship with the land, and how art comes from that history, and how art is the thing that not only saved myself, but is one of the biggest ways that I think that we as Indigenous people, we as people of color, we as people from different experiences are going to be able to right some of those wrongs, and share with people the real truth about our communities, about our real history, and how we want to be perceived in the future. So thank you very much for letting me speak. Louise, back to you.
Daryl, thank you so much. I wrote down a couple of things. Thank you for reminding us that trade is not just goods, but it's also our culture and our arts and our stories. Thank you for reminding us that creative writing can empower us. And also thank you for reminding us that there is power in truth. What an amazing story. Thank you so much, Daryl. Next, we have Lynette Ford. She's a fourth generation storyteller and teaching artist with the Ohio Arts Council and the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education. She also happens to be a great grandmom. For more than 30 years, Lynn has provided stories for libraries and schools. She's been a keynote and closing presenter at workshops and universities, and also has done many education and literary conferences. And she's been featured at some of the most prestigious storytelling conferences and festivals in the United States. She's the author of many books, including 2 story collections from her family's heritage of tales, Appalachian Tales, folk tales from African-American Appalachian traditions and beyond the Briar Patch, Appalachian Folktales Food and Folklore. The food just kind of like got me there, Lynn, so maybe you could talk a little bit about that. So both books won the Annie Izard Storytellers Choice Awards. Her awards include 2 National Storytelling Network Oracle Awards, and Lynn is also a member of the Writers Panel of the National Writing Project and the National Association of Black Storytellers Circle of Elders. So Lynn, we look forward to hearing from you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Louise. I come from a place of story. When you think of story in the United States, a lot of people think of the Appalachian region, not realizing that it goes all the way up to Canada. But for us, it tends to start at the state of New York in the north and go all the way down into North Carolina in the south. And so did my family when I was a little girl. I was born in Appalachian, Pennsylvania, to a family of storytellers. I'm the 4th generation storyteller that we know of. I'm just the first one to get paid for running her mouth, which would probably make my father and other elders laugh because they would have paid me to shut up. Could we see the first slide, please? Thank you. When I was a little girl, I didn't know about the heritage of our family. I just knew everyone told stories. Now I can say that I am very proudly Afro-Latin or African American Appalachian, with people also from the Cherokee or Salagi and the Choctaw as a part of my heritage, as well as Scots, Irish, German, French, and English. My Pop-Pops was one of my favorite storytellers. He was my mother's father, and he would take me for walks. We might go down a trail, and he seemed to know where he was going. Nobody ever seemed to need a map. He might have learned that from his father, my great pops, as I called him, Jerome Bonaparte Arkward. Bonaparte, yes, as in the Napoleon Bonaparte family. But his son, Bayard, my pop-ups, would walk us down a path, and perhaps there would be a wagon wheel, and that would become the wagon wheel path that might lead to a road. And as we walked down that road, my pop-ups might notice something about the trees, or something rustling in the grass, or some little critter, like an old turtle walking across the trail. And he would start to tell a story. But he would start with words that you didn't find in fairy tale books, and I didn't hear them from my teachers when I was in school. He would say something like, once upon a time, about time and a half ago, this didn't happen, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway. And I knew that he was going to give me a story. He was considered by some a tall tale teller, but Grandma Josephine said he was just a liar. He'd look at that turtle crossing the trail, and he would tell me how old Grandpa Turtle was trying to get home when a hunter and his son, having found nothing in their hunt, picked him up to take him home to eat, but they didn't know how to cook a turtle. Now, my pop-ups would always say, old folks know everything. And I believed him at the time. And he said that old turtle had lived long enough that he knew how he could play a trick. When he heard those two talking about how to cook him, he said, well, the first thing you got to do is tenderize me so that I slide out of this shell. You can't eat the shell. If you take me down to the water and toss me in, after a while, I'll get kind of soft and squishy, and the shell will get kind of loose and soft. I'll slide right out. I'll bob up to the top, and you can eat me when you take me home. You just cut me up and put me in a pot. It'll be easier if I'm tender. I won't feel the pain. So those two, that hunter and his son, took him down to the water and threw him in, and they waited and they waited and they waited, not knowing that old man turtle could swim. Now, after my grandfather would say something like that, I might ask him, is that true? And he would say, not happily ever after for the turtle, he would say, well, if it ain't, it should be. And I could imagine as I got older, my pop-ups walking down those trails and paths through all the trees, looking at the small creatures there, and saying, his father saying what he would say to me, sometimes you just need to listen. When you walk through the woods, listen. The woods will talk to you. Now, they were in East Liverpool, Ohio, a place of hills and valleys. And Pop-Pop's second wife, my grandma Josephine, who will be in the next slide, she went fishing with him. She didn't care if that was not a ladylike thing to do. They would go fishing down in places in West Virginia in the hills, down all the way into North Carolina. And she cooked fish like nobody else. Fried with cornmeal, salted and peppered. They wouldn't say where their fishing holes were. That was something special and private between them. And to this day, I don't know exactly where they went, but they went together. Our whole community was folks who did things together. Neighbors and friends were like family. And when things went wrong, they would be there for one another. And you walked everywhere when I was a little girl because everybody didn't have cars. The folks where I lived in the flats didn't all have cars. And I didn't think of anybody as poor. We just didn't have money. Church was right around the corner. You walked to church. The Ruth African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church down in that valley. And you knew everyone. And you couldn't get yourself in trouble without somebody else telling you to go home. And when you get home, they would have used the clothesline telegraph to let your mama know. Clothesline telegraph women in the backyards hanging clothes on the line, hollering from yard to yard. Did you see what Lenny Jean just did? Make sure her mama knows that. So some folks didn't have phones, but they knew all that was going on. Now that was in Appalachian, Pennsylvania, Mercer County. And our little area, the flats, changed after a while. There was a lot of flooding that went on in a place of steel and rail and coal being transported. And those floods would clean that air. You could smell the difference, but they also flooded out the homes. And after there was a freeze one year, they found the money for a dam, and the Shenango Valley Dam came to be because of that big freeze. And the flats changed into apartments, not individual homes, but the church still stands there. If you tried to figure out where those two might go fishing, you might end up in the place in the next slide, the Harpers Ferry area. Now, Harpers Ferry National Park is a historical park in West Virginia, and it was named for a man, Robert Harper, who had a ferry go across the waters in the times before there were bridges there, in the times before there was any railroad in that area. But if you go down there now, there's no ferry, and you can see the pillars from the old rail bridges. And the water is fresh and clean. And if you sit and listen, sounds like the water is talking to you. I love going down in that area. I love seeing the hills and the changes of seasons. Never done any fishing down there. My job in those fishing days, if Grandma Joe and Pop-Pop's fished nearby, was to put the bait on the hook. And that was a sad thing to me. But I loved the fried fish that came from the catch. People think of Harper's Ferry and they think of John Brown's raid and the results of that after the armory was raided in 1859. They don't think about the place, the people, the homes, just the historical point. And if you go there now, many things have been preserved, but it's not what it was back in those days. And if people don't share the stories of place that they keep in their hearts, then those old places are lost. My father was somebody who kept the places in his heart. He's in the next slide, standing on the steps to one of the homes. Yep, there are so many hills that a lot of the back doors lead to steps that go downhill, or you go toward the front door and you have to go up a bunch of steps, and nobody objected to that. And everybody found a way to do it, even the ones who were using walking sticks or canes. If somebody couldn't get up the steps, then there was somebody who would carry them up or hold their arm and bring them up and down the steps. And when you got up the steps or down the steps, there was usually somebody with a glass of ice water or lemonade or sweet tea. My father, Edward McLean Cooper, or Macklin, depended on which part of the family was saying his mother's maiden name, didn't tell some stories. He was a member of the last graduating classes of the 477th Bombardment Group of the Tuskegee Airmen. He graduated as a second lieutenant, but his battle was not overseas. Those classes were the ones that integrated the military forces. And the stories of what happened to them are just as bad as some of the stories of things that happened in Europe. When I was born, my father's medals and all the little paraphernalia from his uniform were sitting in a cigar box on a little pie crust table in my Grandma Cooper's dining room. And every now and then I'd go there and get out the pins and put them on my shirt. And when he'd see me, he'd put his hat on me and he'd fly me around the dining room table with my arms out. And that's as close as flying as he could get, because being a man of color, no airline, no commercial service would hire him to fly. He'd tell me folk tales, going down trails. Could you put up the next slide, please, Patrick? Trails that seemed like they led to nowhere. And he would drive down those kind of trails too, after he had helped some elder who might not even be related to us to turn the soil for their spring planting, or cut the tall grass in a field that had lain fallow, or fix something on the house. I was the only one that would ride with him after a while because of those paths and roads. We would be on our way home and he would see something like the trail that you see there. And he'd say, oh, let's go down there. And he'd stop the car, or if it was a dirt road, he'd drive down it. And we ended up at a place called Lost. But I was never worried, because the whole time we were getting lost, he would tell stories of Rabbit and Old Man Turtle, just like Pop-Pops would tell, and Fox and Brother Bear. He would tell stories about how things came to be, why the long-tailed bear ended up with a short tail, why the turtle ended up with a shell that's cracked. And I have all those stories in my head and heart, but I was afraid that they would get lost. And that's why I put them in books, to keep them, at least in one version, because you may not hear my voice speak it in the same way that it is in those books, but I'm grateful for the preservation of the stories. One of the people who didn't tell stories was my Grandma Jean. What she did was keep a garden. She's in the next slide, smiling with some of her flowers. Now, Grandma Jean was my mama's mama. Grandma Jo was my Pop-Pop's second wife. That's a whole story. Grandma Jean died when I was 3 years old, but I can still remember her voice. And I can remember the flowers that both Grandma Jo and Pop-Pops kept growing in the garden because they had been planted by my Grandma Jean. She didn't tell stories, but she was a story herself. You see, she played piano in the times of the silent movies, that dramatic piano playing that would help with the action and the energy of the film. At the same time, in those theaters in East Liverpool, Ohio, her own children could not sit down there where she played. They had to sit in the balcony of the theater. But every now and then, my mother told me, they would sneak down and sit beside the piano, and they couldn't even see the film when they did that, but they were closer to their mama. My daddy didn't play piano, but my mother did. My daddy played what's called gut bucket blues. It's deep and it's raw, and in the middle of the night, you would hear him as the sun was going down sometimes. Could you put up the next slide, please? Like this sunset in Tennessee, and you'd hear the crickets coming out. And if my daddy was home from work, he'd get his guitar and he would start to strum that guitar. Raw, sad, beautiful. And people would see that sky sometimes in the evenings. Red sky in the morning, folks would say, sailor take warning. Red sky at night, sailor's delight. The stories begin at sunrise and they don't end at sunset. Now the sun has set for much of the past in those places. That part of East Liverpool is now a highway. The street where I lived Most of the houses are gone, and it tried to go back to forest, but they're talking about building apartments there. Still, I'm a storyteller, and my mama in the next picture helped me to tell stories too by reading to me every night in our little bedroom, in our little house. So even though some places and some parts of the past are gone, I still carry them in my heart and in my head. And the stories find a new day in the hearts and minds of those who hear them and remember them and share the stories. Thank you for listening. Luis, back to you.
And that was so amazing. Thanks for reminding us that old folk know everything. Also, if stories ain't true, they should be. Thanks for helping us understand and remember that communities do things together. And that we should listen to the water because it talks to us. Thank you for helping us understand that steps are an opportunity to help each other. What a wonderful story. Thank you so much for investing your time in us tonight. Carlos Ryonsi Tanaka is a sculpture ceramic artist, a one-time philosophy major at the Pontificia Universidad Católica del Perú. He chose to dedicate himself to the art of pottery making, undertaking studies in Brazil and Italy and Japan, and his art reflects his early interests in biological science, archaeology, and geology. A renewed quest for answers to issues of identity and history has galvanized his artistic process. And since 1990, he has been a visiting professor at the prestigious universities in Japan and the United States. And he's also a member of the International Academy of Ceramics. He lives and works in Lima, Peru, and he has held numerous solo exhibitions in Latin America, the United States, Japan, and Italy. In the US, his work is in the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. So if you're ever there, please visit. He's also at the Art Museum of the Americas, at the World Bank Art Collection, the Inter-American Development Bank Art Collection in Washington, DC, and also at the Clay Studio in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and as well as the Northern Arizona University Art Museum in Flagstaff. So without further ado, let's hear from Carlos. Bienvenido.
Gracias. Thank you, Luis. Thank you, everyone. I would like to thank Adriano Spina, who introduced me to Betty Ginis, and Betty invited me to this special event, to this special symposium. And as Luis well said, I am a visual and a ceramic artist. I come from Peru, and I have mixed ancestry, local, indigenous, Spanish, British, and Japanese blood runs through me. So I want to share some stories on belonging with you all, and I would like to ask Patrick to share the screen so we can run a PowerPoint. Finding the stories, reuniting the fragments. The stories that follow, like many of the fragments that I have collected over time, are part of the constant search for identity. Sometimes they find a foothold in real territory and space. Other times, they have to do with memory and acquired concepts. stories that build up and raise questions, searching for answers in our memory. Who we were, who we are, who we will be. A place to belong, the desert landscape of Peru. Finding objects in the desert, the coastal landscape and the permanent presence of archaeological and pre-Hispanic elements in Peru have been an important reference, a place where many stories take place. These are pieces that go back to nature, to the landscape. I work with forms that interact, creating visual systems that modify, invade, transform, and take possession of space. Objects that often refer to a time before the presence of man on Earth, when the sea and the planet were other. Life in the desert landscape. The crab. Displacements. At Cerro Azul in Cañete, 130 kilometers south of Lima, there is a small ring-enclosed spot on the beach with an obelisk commemorating the arrival of the first group of Japanese immigrants to Peruvian shores on the ship Sakura Maru on April 3, 1899. Surrounding the obelisk, inside the ring, there are thousands of tiny sunbaked crabs that were brought in by the tide and unable to return, remain stranded on the beach. To Walter O. Runcie Stockhausen and Shinichi Tanaka, my grandfathers. Finding the crabs on the shore. A long journey. Displacements of the crab between water and land. Guillermo Shinichi Tanaka was born in Takamatsu, Japan in 1904 and died in Ancon, Peru in 1940 when he was only 36. I never knew him, although his presence, like the figure of the crab, permeates much of my work. Sometimes I think that just like the warrior horseshoe crab in the old Japanese tale, he travels on the back of a crab, back and forth, in time and in my memory. He came with the sea, and he left with the sea. My British grandfather, Walter O. Runcie Stockhausen, photographer and documentary filmmaker, was one of the first to capture aerial images of Peru. My memories of him are related to film processing tanks, negatives hung on a line to dry, and huge photomurals. 36 expositions, film processing pool is an attempt to bridge the gap between these two foreigners, one Oriental and the other Occidental, whose lives would cross without them ever meeting. Folding and folding paper. I write with my eyes, with the heart, with the hand. I ask for advice from my ears and my lips. Every verse that I write is this flesh and bone. Only my thought is made of paper. This is a poem from Jorge Eduardo Eyelson. Folding paper, folding the stories, and sending them all over to the world, to the universe. Unfolding them. Yesterday I went to the sea to eat sand, and I do not know if I swallowed the beginning or the end of the universe. A poem by Raquel Jodorowsky. Time recovered, social awareness, the body or the measure of all things. Lima, December 17, 1996. A command of the Tupac Amaru revolutionary movement enters through a hole opened with dynamite to the residence of the ambassador of Japan. After being held for several days, taken hostage in the siege reivindicated by the MRTA, I was liberated together with another 100 people on Christmas Eve, this time as symbolic hostages. Experience and art intersect in a strange way. This is the result of the experience. 100 roses for 100 weights. I wrote this paragraph. Artists are tokens of little value. For those who remained here, there, the wait lasted for almost 4 months. In my studio, my hostages were waiting, a tightly arranged group of figures in fired clay. Over 100, the core of an installation in the making, an installation appropriated by this experience. A constantly changing reality becomes evident in a renewed attention to the connection between things and the relationship between beings and the world we inhabit. Tiempo detenido, stand still, do not forget. Inner world, words, mind, personal myths. A head full of stories, full of words, full of sentences and questions. The hand is an extension of the head and the heart. Working with clay allowed me to use my hands, and the questions still remained in my head. These fears, prayer beads, are the reiteration of words and sounds, and they create a harmonic rhythm permeating space and senses. No es lo que piensas, not what you think. No es lo que dices, not what you say. No es lo que escuchas, not what you listen to. Same prayers. Other stories, new diverse geographies. South of Peru, the landscape, archaeology, and architecture of Arequipa, a land of constant geological changes, are the starting point for this story. In the quarries of Añashuayco, I met Nicolás Ramos, Coa, a stonemason who works between heaven and earth. He shared his experiences and collected the sillar spheres, white and round as the light and moon of Arequipa. The purpose of art is to embody the secret essence of things, not to copy their appearance. Aristotle. These are the white spheres collected by Nicolás. Different backgrounds, hands that fold and hands that find truth in the white sillar sphere, in the mountain, in the quarries. Past and present into the future. If you cannot resign yourself to leave the past behind, then you must recreate it. That's what I've always done. Louis Bourgeois. Contemporary clay objects and pre-Hispanic ceramic vessels side by side in the museum. I've been so lucky to live in a country like Peru, so I've been collecting fragments also to find my identity, and this story is about reuniting the fragments. These fragments I have shored against my ruins from the wasteland, T.S. Eliot. Spherical forms. Peru is not a country, let alone a nation. It is an archipelago of temporalities and expressions that coexist simultaneously. Waikokawa Rio. living in a country occupied by multiple nations, it's similar to having a mind occupied by multiple fragments. We have a work of interpretation and integration to do. Eduardo Westelumenti. These fragments, broken and reunited, represent the hope of one united territory, where different races and cultures advance together in search of a common future. Different geographies, one nation, one world. Hoping the world will come together too. Voices, bodies, souls, inwards, interior geography. The events of my heart and a heart surgery in year 2008. Flashes and bursts of intense light appeared at intervals in my dream. In the past, the crab symbolized the access door for the souls that came from their journey through the stars and descended into the world to be born as human beings. The crab now moves along the path that crosses space and leads to the heart of light, into white, hacia el blanco. A white path of paper going through the gallery space, and a crystal crab symbolizing life. Facing my own heart and another river of paper. Life goes on. Art as an instrument that generates new questions, leaving reason aside and giving way to intuition, a process that often brings together reality and imagination, science and magic. Starting from our own experience and life itself, we try to understand what's new, recognizing what we know and receive by intuition, pursuing clear visions, sometimes with no answers, in the intent to find truth and connection to the land, the place to belong. I would like to share with you this poem by Louis Bourgeois, Listening, the Voice and the Music. What counts, it's not my voice, it's your voice, is your voice. When you recite, when you speak, when you teach, when you sing, when you cry, it's my life, all my life. Thank you so much for listening to the stories. Luis, back over to you.
Carlos, I just got to take a minute to kind of soak that all in. It's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and how art and land have affected you. I'm reminded that sometimes our lives cross with those who we will never meet. I'm also reminded that experience and art intersect in very strange ways sometimes. Also, I'm reminded that, thank you for reminding us that we can recreate our past. And that's a very, very powerful thing to just to think about, that we can recreate our past. Thank you, Carlos. We appreciate you so much. Next, we have Cheick Hamala Diabate. He is a griot or a storyteller, and Dijale, I might be mispronouncing that, so Cheick, please correct me. But it's a form of being a musician and a poet. The Cheick is from Kitamali, who was born into a family with an 800-year-old griot Dijale tradition. He is internationally celebrated as one of the most famous string lute and ancestor of the banjo, and the name for that is Ngoni, and please correct me on that one as well, Cheick. He's a sought-after lecturer and storyteller and choreographer, and has performed at the Kennedy Center here in the U.S., as well as the Smithsonian Institute. Cheick Diabate shares the oral history and music and the song of his culture as it was passed on to him from birth by parent to child. The music we griots play is not just about making nice sounds for dancing. It is about giving a lesson to people about their lives. So would you please welcome Cheick Hamala Diabate, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Cheick Hamala Diabate. I am very happy to be here tonight with you guys. Luis, thank you. You say good my name and the Goni, everything good. Today, I'm very, very happy. I am griot. Griot actually is a storyteller, consolateur, advisor. Griot sing, griot play music. And we are big family, long history, because we learn from our ancestor, grandfather, father to son. And also today, I'm glad to be here to tell you a little bit about the griot culture. And the instrument here I hold to my hand, we call that ngoni. And ngoni is very, very old. It's a kind of many instruments, string instrument came from the ngoni. And ngoni originally is a 4-string. But the new generation, we can put from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 string. And also our family, very important family, we have the kora. The kora is the ancestor of the harp, American harp. The kora is a 21 string. And also we have the bala. The bala is a 21 key. And the keyboard, the xylophone, they came from the bala. That's very important to tell people. Have this family, you know, they keep this music long time ago. And actually, I want to tell you about the griot. The griot is the French war, because the Mali is colonized from the French people. When they came to Mali, they give this name griot. But our people call us jelly. And the jelly is like when you say jelly. J is the union. And the li in English, that's the honey. Good union and good results. Very important. We need to be together to progress. And the griot, one time again, when we say jelly, in Mandingo, mean the blood. If you take the human being, you take one person from your head to your feet. If the blood don't circle between your body, it's not easy. You're not gonna function good. The griot is like that to our culture. The griot go to everybody family. Griot know everybody history. Because when I say the human from your head, if you don't have the blood circulate for la circulation to your head, you're not gonna be good. The griot is like that from the head to the body to the feet. That's like the family, many family in Africa. So the griot go, you know, everybody history. Like today, when people call me to come here, I say, oh, okay, because I have a million history. That's because I'm glad to come to this program. I live in my country, Mali, to come to America. Everybody keep asking, how the griot important people live this country like that to come to stay in America? I tell them, well, life is a several morning. To know where you go, you gotta know where you come from. I tell them I'm here to looking for something. That means I share my culture with American people. I learn something from them. They learn something from me. That's for me, that's very important. And I came here in America. So I live in Washington, D.C. area, long time ago, Maryland. And we have 1 million Malian people live in America. They say, oh, now we have the griot here. We are so happy. I try to do this culture like I am in Mali. When somebody marry in Mali, you don't go to looking for your wife. You come to the griot family, and the griot go to looking for your wife for you. Go to the wife family to make sit down father, mother, to tell them about the marriage. Because I do that here in America. I travel a lot. I go to many, many different places for marriage. It's not only the music I do. Sometimes I do go for make people advise and, make people together. And I go here. If somebody married, they come to see me like we are in Mali. I go to the family and tell people, but marriage is not like the clothes. Today you're wearing white and tomorrow black and after tomorrow yellow. No, marriage is only one color. Don't be married to divorce like that. It's not good. And I told people, so when you married, don't say my husband don't wearing the suit every day. He don't have a Mercedes, either Lexus, either, if you're gonna stay behind your husband, anything he have it, God never sleep. One day you guys are going to be happy. But if you leave your husband to say, oh, you want to some marriage, you see somebody wearing too nice clothes, like the suit, and you're gonna say, oh my God, I love this guy because he's more beautiful than my husband. And also, now you leave your husband, and this guy, the one you see, he have 1 million girlfriend. He don't think about you. One time you never see him anymore. The griot tell you many, many things the day you're going to be married, to follow your marriage. Very nice. Can be men, it can be women. Something, don't say my wife is don't wearing nice clothes. I'm gonna go get some different women. No good. Marriage is very, very important. After that, the day you get a new baby, the griot come again to play for this baby name, to tell the parents, don't forget the new baby, take care very, very well, make him happy for his life, and make him go to school for education. Very important for the future. If you don't do that, you mess up. The griot always tell people the good things. That's because our culture, we say the griot, our government and our people trust the griot more than the government. Because every decision you have to take for your life, you go to see the griot first, and griot come to the TV, tell the griot tell you, and after you come to the TV, sit down to the news, tell people, okay, do this, do this. But the idea came from the griot. That's because today I'm gonna play some song called Sunjata Keita. Sunjata Keita is the empire of Mali. And Mali, all these family name, you see million family name, but you tell me your last name, I tell you from your ancestor to you. When you say Sunjata Keita, when you say Keita, you say Keita, Keita, Nare Maga Mandenka, Jakuma Kabala Simbo, Tuntanjon Tan Worokala Fajonani, Chuba Jata Wali. That's from your ancestor to you. And you see, when somebody see the griot, they scare the griot. If you're not good, if you good, you're gonna be with the griot. If not good, because the griot never joke for nobody. He like to make people work very hard and make themselves happy. That time, if you're not good, you're scared to see the griot. And the griot talk to everyone, like I'm here from the ambassador to all of people live in America. When I say something, they take very serious, because I'm not I don't joke, and I do like my father, my grandfather. I am here very, very happy. And also, we have many different families. Like I told you, when it's a Keita, after Keita, you have a Traore. You see, even the rap, American rap, came from the griot. Because the griot, when you say Traore, okay, trois mgani kanke jamu ke musoni moke datuma baba na faba ko masaba na jaba ko masamuri bantra mama ba yalo tamai pansir mama kusirin kasne sasile fabro danga fabro mata fini mata je. That's my last name. And I have a family, many different family. Today, because the history, you know, the time is a little short, but I wish to meet again to tell you about my music and how go this music. If you say Kulubali, that's one king family to say Kulubali Masasi Sere, ani Alai Donkoro, ani Baji, Koya Sanja, ani Koya Mamru, Dangele Mula communication masa, Tukoro Mamru, ani Jaba Nene. You see, when we tell anyone from your ancestor to you, if you're not good, you're going to be good. That's because the griot is very, very important. Today, we're going to do the history about Sunjata Keita. And Sunjata Keita, that's because I've gone here, I will say, because this music the history go with the music. When somebody play, somebody speak. When somebody speak, somebody play. That's how we do the history go with the music. I have the goni here. I'm gonna play a little bit because this history take 3 days. But tonight, we don't have much time, but I wish to be, because I teach here from here, China, everywhere, the university, but I really like to meet those people important, like I see today, Louise, Darrell, Lynette, Carlos, Patricia, something happy. Now I'm gonna play a little bit the history because it's too long, but I'm going to be short. You gotta listen to the griot very careful, and thank you. Mandi mogo sumara mandi kalu ye mansalu bana ko sugulu njata ifarala ni mogo juma ntama bi mande sugulu njata farala kone jara sangaranga kone kasaura kone jiba min kone dala kumun kamani kone jiba min kone tekele mino kone muso den tekele mino bi babo kele baratia ko tawurukuru la waragada fada ko la ila yaminteni muguju kala bi baba alumayi. Okay, that's the history of a Sunjata family. Sunjata Keita, the Empire of Mali. His father was married to 2 wives. You know, here our culture is not the same. In Mali, you can marry a couple of women, but it's not in America like that, because one American woman is like 1,000 women. So I want to be short. So Sunjata Keita was, the father of, what do you call it again? Let's go from the father. Father was married to 2 wives. And the first wife, we call her Sasoma Berete. And the second wife is Sogolon Kuduma. And Sunjata, at the time, his mom was pregnant. It was a 3-year. Mom was pregnant 3 years. And Sunjata, when Sunjata born, Sunjata stay before he work 9 years in the floor, he can work. That time, they have a hard time because the first wife, I have a son, can go bring everything to his mom. Bon. And now Sunjata can work, can do nothing for his mom because he is handicapped. The first son of Sasuma Berete Dankarantuma go bring a lot of leaf. The baobab leaf, that was the good food that they eat. And but Sunjata can go to anywhere because he can work. Now we pray God every day, this guy can work. And after that, every day the second wife come to baking for Sasuma we can have some food. Please, you guys eat. Can you give the rest to us? This first wife said, no, we don't give nothing to you. Go to tell to your son, because my son bring for me. Go tell to your son to bring the food for you. And his son can work, Sunjata Keita. He can work. Now they pray God. And one day Sunjata get very, very mad. He tried to call God. Can you please help me? Can you please help me? And he called his griot, Balafaske Kuyate, to go to his father, Smith. You know, Smith bring the iron. I needed to work because he's a handicap. He want to send up. Now, when they went to his blacksmith force to bring the iron, it take 40 people to bring. But the Sunjata will sit down, 40 people bring the iron, but it take only by one hand, and he tried to send up. Every time he tried, but he broke the one iron. And they bring the second iron, he broke that too. And they bring the third one, he broke that too. Now he been sit down to say, okay, I'm glad, happy, because I'm come from very strong family. I tell his mom, he tell his mom to say, okay, bring me the apple trees, Sunsumbere in Mandingo. And when mom say, okay, since I get married to your daddy, I never lied to him. I was correct. Anytime he wanted me to send up, it can be midnight, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 3 a.m., anytime, I'm ready for your daddy. If that's true, I'm gonna bring the 3 sacred tree to give to you. And his mom bring the apple tree. And the day Sunjata send up in Mandeng, that was very special. And his mom say everywhere, please come out, come out. Today is a very special day. My son work, I'm happy. My son work, I'm happy. And they sing that day 40 different songs. Very, very important. And all this song, the griot know is about something, the family. Very, very important. I'm glad, happy. I know my English, but I'm happy to serve my culture, like I say here. Very, very happy. And I'd like to thank my good friend, Michael Schreckers, helped me today to do this program. And I'd like to thank all of you to share this culture with me. And Luis, thank you again. God bless. Keep in touch.
Thank you so much, Cheick Diabate. Thank you for reminding us that the griot knows everybody.
Thank you.
Also that the griot is trusted even more than the government.
Yeah, that's a deep question.
You know, this is just a quick aside. I know that in many cultures, the spoken word, the historian, the oral historian was trusted even more than the written word because somebody could have miscopied a writing, or perhaps a writing was forged, but somebody like the griot was always trusted because that history had been passed down in the oral tradition. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I would like to remind our audience that you can feel free to ask questions of any of our panelists on the Q&A. I'm not sure exactly how much time we have, but while we wait for some of the questions to come into the queue, I'd like to ask all 4 of our panelists very quickly. And just a question that kind of came to my mind, because all of your art forms are so different. And I'd like to ask you, did your art form choose you, or did you choose your art form? Any thoughts on that from any of our panelists? Please
sorry.
go ahead and take yourself off mute if you'd like to answer. Go ahead.
I know for myself, when I was working through a lot of the trauma and some of the emotional issues that I was going through, one of the things, I didn't really have an outlet to work with it. A lot of our cultural ways that we used to deal with that have been sort of lost over the years. So one thing I started doing was writing as a form of therapy. And that's sort of, as I started writing, that became more and more about how I coped with things, dealt with things, was able to understand my place in thing. And so what happened was, one day I realized that I had written almost like novels full of writing and plays full of writing in every form and genre that I knew how to do. And before I knew it, while I chose writing then became a part of me. It became who I was, and it became my identity without me even realizing it. And it's now how I pretty much deal with everything.
One of the things I appreciate about you, Darrell, is your transparency, because your art form, has been born out of struggle, much hardship, and so thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else? I know that's kind of a can be a strange question, but go ahead, please, Cheick.
Yeah, I just want to say this question is very important, but actually I'm griot because I don't work all my life travel. Somewhere when I go, they say, "Oh, Cheick, can we come griot?" I told them, "No, we don't come griot. We born griot." It's from my family. We don't go to school for all this I was saying right now. We learn from the family. And at that time is a very big, for me, very big things, good family to make the history of all this family in Mali, I can say West Africa. And we born griot. We don't come griot, but we born griot. That's what I want to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheick. Anybody else have, Carlos, go ahead and take off your,
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, please. I just want to say that, well, in my case, I was looking for other things when I was a kid, when I was a young man, like archaeology, other interests like music. And eventually I studied philosophy, but my parents wanted me to have a degree, but I could not finish those studies. So I decided at a point that the texts and the books were difficult for me, were like a burden. So those words, I had to sing them for the songs, and I had the hands to wedge clay. So clay came to me naturally. And in a country like Peru, where you have craftsmen and folk, very healthy folk and alive folk, and a contemporary folk tradition, it was natural to me to find that clay and ceramics would be a way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. One of the things that I noted about your artwork, and I don't mean to go off on a tangent here, but spheres seem to have really influenced your artwork, this concept of spheres. And also the crab, that was very interesting. Now, you may not know, but here in Maryland, the
Yes.
blue crab is like,
Crab.
that's well, I think it's a state crustacean, but at the same time, it's something that we can identify with here in Maryland is the crab. Now, of course, we eat crab.
Yes, I know.
In a sphere. It's called a crab cake.
In a sphere, a crab
Yeah,
cake.
es un pastel de congrejo, sí. It's a sphere. So it's crazy. I'm sorry.
Well, I have some friends in Maryland. They always tell me about the blue crab. They're beautiful, actually. I don't eat the crabs. I cannot eat the crabs myself. I found the crab. The crab found me also. I was surfing waves, and somehow a huge wave, stranded me on the shore. When I opened the eyes, I saw the crabs surrounding me. So I thought that the crabs would symbolize migration issues. My
Yeah.
foreign grandfathers who came and arrived to Peruvian shores. So that's interesting. I decided to use him as a very special symbol of migration. That's why I modeled it in clay and I folded in origami paper, no, like the origami tradition in Japan. But the sphere has to do with centering yourself. A potter. I started as a potter, not as a visual artist, but I started to learn on a wheel. So I would throw circular forms in a circular motion on the wheel. So eventually a vessel, like a bowl, started to grow in size and I closed a bowl into the sphere, like completing a world of intention, a world of meaning. So that's where the sphere comes. Okay.
That's fantastic, Carlos. Lynn, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Who's going to take your place?
Oh, I have a granddaughter who started telling stories at the age of 3, just as I
Wow.
did, except they were lies. And just as I did. And I think that she's a natural born storyteller. My children all have that gift of gab, and they're powerful speakers, and one's a musician. So there's that aspect to it too. But I really think my granddaughter is going to be the next storyteller in the family.
Let me just ask you kind of a sidebar to that. Is storytelling, is it something that's caught rather than taught?
That's a good question. I have coached people who came from drama theater backgrounds to be more effective storytellers, because it's not exactly the same thing. You don't follow a script and you are trying your best to make it narrative communication with others, not just a performance. It can inform and enrich and educate. Without people realizing all of that is happening, they feel that a storyteller is one-to-one, even if you're with 1,000 people. It feels connected in that way. So I don't know. I think that if you come from a storytelling family, you actually have an advantage, because you know that you're communicating with someone. When you come from a drama to theater background, you have to get rid of some of that theatrical stuff and just be the storyteller that we all are.
That's great, Lynn. We do have a question real quick for you, and I'll throw this out to Darrell. Darrell, can you comment one more time on the significance of your home and your homeland to your work? And then if the Cheick wouldn't mind following up on that, that would be good.
Yeah, I mean, as a large part of my culture, pretty much the intent of my culture and where I come from and my people is based in the land. All of our language, all of our understanding, our worldview comes from the land, comes from the thousands upon thousands of year old history of that land. So I think that my understanding is probably of the world, or the stories that I like to tell, my truth probably comes from that thousands upon thousands of years understanding. We have something in our culture called, I know it's a lot of cultures have this, it's called different things, but it's like a blood memory is something that we really believe in our culture, that those stories, that blood, the trauma, the good, the ancestors, they carry with you, and those stories get told from generation to generation. That memory gets told. So we are more like conduits, I guess, to tell these stories in a lot of ways. It's, I have my own take, I have my own personal take on these things, but it's also combined with that history, and that history comes from the land. So that is all imbued in every story I tell, and I can't help it. I mean, that's part of it. It's a huge part of it, I think.
Great. Just as an aside, I heard recently, I mean, within the last couple of weeks, that scientifically they're showing that blood does have a memory. Isn't that interesting? I don't quote me I can't quote the source, but I understand that that's the case. So Cheick, do you have something to share on that?
Yeah, happy. All this. One thing I like to say, to keep the culture very, very important. I like to thank my family very, very well. Long time ago, from 800 years ago. That's not today. And all I know, my family, anywhere we go, people keep this traditional and people take the culture very important. You see, the griot very important. The day even Chunjata work, he bring everything for his mom. So life is a several morning, everyone happy. Like I was saying, we don't go to school to learn, but we learn from the family. Like you said, Daryl, I forget the name, but all this, when you listen very well, you say it's very close. It's close. It's close. It doesn't matter to Africa here. Every descendants, the family, like right now, I don't know the name. The woman was saying right now, his granddaughter keep this culture. That's very, very important to forget yourself and to don't forget the culture. That's why I'm here in America, happy for that, and to be more proud of American people, because I teach here from many kids grow up with me, guitar, goni, banjo. I work with everyone. I am happy.
Thank you so much, Cheick. Well, it's about time for us to wrap up, but I did want to give our panelists one last thought. Betty, do we have time for that?
Of course.
Okay, fantastic. So in just one sentence, Darrell, what would you like to leave our audience with?
Always speak your truth. The cliche, the truth will set you free, but it also, I find the more truthful you are, the more you you embrace your own truth and live by that, it can save lives.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Lynn, last final thought?
Always remember that you have stories no one else can tell. If you share the history of your family, you create a foundation for the young ones, and you keep your family's ancestors alive.
Oh, that's true.
Wow, thank you. Carlos?
Well, I would just like to remember these are hard times for everyone in the world, and we need to stay together, tell us stories, share them, and build up this world to be a better place for everyone. Everyone has a story to tell and to share, and we can learn from everyone in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carlos. Cheick,
Yes.
final thought?
Dernier mot.
Le dernier mot. Bon, I mean, so glad, happy to be here. I really want to thank you, Betty, again for the program, all of you, Luis. So I come again to say, like it was a keep in touch. We need to be together to progress, to know where you go. If you know where you come from, you can know where you go. So I'm happy. I'm the griot. I know my English, but actually I'm glad, happy to be here in America. God bless America. God bless Africa.
Thank you, Cheick. Betty, over to you. It's been wonderful, guys. Thank you so much to all of our panelists.
We in World Artist Experiences just express such deep gratitude to each one of you. To Luis, what can I say? You're such an excellent, thoughtful, wonderful moderator this evening for all of us. The fantastic artists and wonderful storytellers, Daryl Dennis, Lynette Ford, Carlos Runcie Tanaka, Cheick Hamala Diabate, for inspiring us with your great stories and developing deeper understanding of the people in our communities and the world. And let me say thank you to Gloria Ellsworth for being here as our generous and gracious interpreter in case Carlos should need that this evening. To Patrick McAllister for our caring technician, and to all the committed volunteer symposium team who worked together, and you the audience. Tell your stories in your communities, in your families, in your homes. We hope that you will join us next week. Invite your colleagues and friends for our final session, Cultural Heritage into the Future, on Monday, November the 15th. Thank you for joining us this evening. Have a beautiful autumn week, and good night.